Welcome to this special show where we're discussing the harmful effects of tobacco smoking, and we have a great set of panelists today to discuss this very sensitive topic, I must say. We have with us Dr. Ravi Mehrotra, who is the CEO of Indian Cancer Research Consortium, Dr. Bharat Gopal, who is the Director and Senior Consultant of National Chess Center, Mr. Deepak Mukarji, who is heading an organization called the Alternatives, which is devoted to harm reduction to the people and to the planet. And we have with us Mr. Bhaskar Bhattacharya, who is the partner of Corporate Law Group. Welcome, sir. So smoking is an addiction, and that is where it all begins. If smoking had it not been an addiction, it wouldn't be a problem, right? So doctor, what do you think? Why smoking is an addiction, firstly? And what are the problems that we are facing in India when it comes to smoking?
Well, Preeti, as you possibly know, we have more than 280 million users of tobacco in this country. We are the second largest producer as well as consumer of tobacco in the world. More than 40% of all cancers in males in this country, in India, are caused by tobacco, either directly or indirectly, whether it is cancer, whether it is cardiovascular, pulmonary, or that is a lung. Every organ of the body by and large is affected. And the active ingredient of tobacco, whether it is cigarettes or bidis, is nicotine. Nicotine happens to be one of the most addictive substances in the world, even more addictive than alcohol and many other drugs. And unfortunately, nicotine was not grown in India. And as mentioned, pure nicotine in high quantities is enough. Even 50 milligram can kill an individual.
Dr. Gopal, what do you think about
a
Dr.
few
Ravi?
things. So, looking at from a pulmonology point of view, or as a practicing pulmonologist, well, I feel that one of the biggest problems is that we don't consider smoking as a disease. We consider it as a habit. And what has happened is that till we start believing that smoking is a chronic medical condition, we will not go to a specialist to look for a cure for it. So unless you accept the fact that you are suffering, you will not look for the alternatives for the cure for that particular problem. Now, if you look at any drug delivery, I think this is one of the finest drug delivery modules which you can get. You have a addictive substance, as as our colleague just said, that gram for gram, or milligram for milligram, gram would be too much, milligram for milligram, it is more addictive than heroin. So a nicotine goes, the single puff will in 7 seconds, it will go into your brain. So you will have both the psychological, physiological and behavioral, all sorts of addictions which are going to occur.
Mr. Mukarji, I would want you to pitch in here. If we have already started smoking and we are an addict, so what according to you is the best way forward, and how is the cessation possible, like the gentlemen are saying?
Sure. Preeti, one of the nasty things about democracy, free choice and adulthood is that we make certain decisions about our own lives. Bad habits is one of them, whether you classify them as medical problems or the other. There was a lovely cartoon I saw the other day which has a long line in front of a window that says pills and surgeries, but 0 people in front of the window that says lifestyle change. Now clearly smoking is one of those habits that there are some people who refuse to give up or who cannot give up.
Right.
The cannot give ups are the ones that require medical help. There are others who make that free choice to refuse to give up. WHO has rated this population to be about 1 billion people today, and they say that by 2030 this number will remain 1 billion people. This is despite decades of education, decades of information, decades of bans on advertising and information sharing on smoking. People still continue to do it. My organization, the Alternatives, is looking at safer alternatives. Currently, the health organization in England has said that vaping is 95% safer than smoking. Is smoking correct? No, it's not. I'm not an advocate of smoking.
Right.
It should be banned. But when there are safer products available, I think we need to bow to science. The current ban on vaping is wonderful if it's in a continuum. because obviously the ban has been put in place by a government that has studied the science behind it. I'm hoping that as the science improves and can prove that this is a facilitation towards cessation. Cessation is the ultimate goal. No amount of smoke ingested in any form is going to be beneficial. And if it's not beneficial, as he says, why start it? I'm sincerely hoping that a ban like this becomes the external force that stops people from smoking.
How we can actually ask the youngsters to be not attracted to smoking, or have those kind of measures to be asking them not to be addicted to smoking?
See, we cannot criminalize a smoker. I mean, you cannot criminalize a person who is diseased. It happened so when HIV was at the boom, it was considered to be a taboo. And there was a lot of education, awareness which was involved, and people actually started believing that this is a kind of a medical condition, it needs treatment. So if you criminalize some act, the person who is addicted, say a youngster, would find out some kind of ways and means to get that thing, though that act would be a criminal act. Now, who will not get it? The actual smokers who are adults, they will not like to, go to that extreme way, because we do silly things when we are adolescents. And it is very true that if you are told that this is something not to be done, there will be every possibility that we would go and we would do that. So if you criminalize that, it's every possibility that the person would get it through illicit means. But a person who is, I can maximum say, who is forced to have nicotine because of its addictive, he will not get that product. So who are we benefiting?
The ordinance also proposes an imprisonment of up to 1 year or a fine of rupees 1 lakh or both. And storage of e-cigarettes shall also be punishable with an imprisonment up to 6 months or fine up to rupees 50,000 or both. So, however, possession of personal use is not banned. How do you interpret this move, sir?
If you have a choice of jumping off the 14th floor of this building as compared to the 9th floor, chances are you might die in both. At least you will get injured in one of them, right? Harmful is harmful, and there is no such thing as less harmful. If I am 20 years of age and I am addicted to ends, I want to get out of ends. I want to come up to something better. How do I do it? Do I go to cold turkey? Do I start cigarettes where I never smoked in my life? I've never taken tobacco. I want to talk about this 95% safer. Well, this figure has been bandied around for too long by too many people. Maybe less harmful, that is a given. Nobody really knows how less harmful or more harmful it is. If we take entire tobacco consumption in India, 10% is roughly cigarettes, 20% is BDs, and 70% is smokeless tobacco. Youngsters, of which I just mentioned, we have a huge number.
Right.
They are the ones. And if you've seen these devices, they are very sleek, they're very easy to hide. Many people think they're actually pen drives, and there is no smoke, so they can get. One day in your suburb of Delhi called Mayur Vihar, a school did a survey of all the bags of all the children. They found 150 devices in one day. I'm sure you've seen it, very widely published everywhere. In the US, there is a Time magazine cover which talks about the new addiction. It is the biggest public health emergency US has faced over the last 40 years.
Dr. Gopal, would you want
So
to?
I have few things to counter.
Yeah, sure, please.
So A, disclaimer, I am not involved with any, even consulting with any industry or so, but now I'll take it from where Professor has just left. Now, ends, aaj ke baad, cigarette, I think it's been many years since we have been doing all this.
We never had ends before.
No, forget about ends. Was getting cigarettes off or banning cigarettes any election motto ever? No. Swachh Bharat is there, but Swachh Zindagi is not there. So let's be very, very categorical about it. We are not serious about getting cigarettes off the hook. One. B, e-cigarettes we are just extrapolating all data we have no data from India. That 0.2% stuff is too less to even create any data, and that is also a practically unregulated form where they're using. All the data which is there is from Western world. We have one school of thought from UK, Public Health England, which says it's one of the sedation devices which you can use, and they have shown in their studies that okay, it has helped, fine. So we look at that science from that particular aspect. The second data has now in last 6 months suddenly come up from US, where they have suddenly started showing lot of deaths, and yeah, there are deaths and there are admissions which are occurred. Now, are all these in chronic end users? No.
Okay.
They are in people who are 16-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old.
Up to 30 actually.
Right. No, there is a 19-year-old guy who is admitted.
Yeah.
Now, so obviously this is a short-term exposure. Lot of them who were biopsied by pulmonary specialists had what is called as lipoid pneumonias. Now, lipoid pneumonias cannot occur unless you have an oil mixture in it. And there is still lot of research going on, because lot of them, when they had gone back and so they were brought off the street market, and they were actually mixed with THC like products which are more addicting, give you more kick. So obviously that's a problem of regulation. And in fact, if I am not wrong, the president of US actually changed his statement. He actually then tweeted that get the counterfeits off the market as compared to the ends, because the initial statement to few days prior to that was ban it. Now, so we have to look at this aspect. Banning, I would actually say if it was an ordinance or ban, it should have also come with a caveat that the ICMR, or which is the biggest research body, would do a study on its own, probably like a drug, and look at does it help, genuinely help our smokers. There is no problem in actually looking at that type of study in harm reduction.
I think every time a new science comes out, the status quo becomes a little nervous of the whole picture. When mobile phones came out, we were told that the radiation from mobile phones was going to give us brain cancer if we kept it close to us. I was told, don't keep your mobile phone. In those days, mobile phones were small. Don't keep it in your shirt pocket, we get a heart attack. There were all sorts of rumors that came out with it. Thank God they didn't ban mobile telephony, otherwise our lives would have been poorer. To say that that only 0.2% or 0.1% smoke, therefore we can ban it. I think the rationale of that statement probably needs to be, I definitely agree that the ban needs to be in place until the science proves it to the contrary. But if it is taken as a continuum, if we shut the barn doors and say we are never going to look at this again,
And then we will not do any scientific.
then you are actually denying the
Inventions,
possibility of finding a harm reduction product that could actually lead to more effective cessation strategies for smokers who cannot give up smoking. I think what is important here is that we need to look at ourselves as a nation, as a people as a mature people who can take decisions for themselves.
Right.
Hell, we voted governments in and we voted governments out. I mean, that is the most remarkable sign of a mature democracy and a mature people. Surely an adult is fit enough to decide. Nobody asks an adult, nobody advises him about having a child. Everybody goes ahead and has children. It's the easiest thing to do. And yet we say, because you vape, I'm going to ban it. It's just going to go under the market. It's going to go under the table. It's going to become a black market product. We keep saying we are banning cigarettes. The cigarette companies fight about banning imported cigarettes. You name me the panwala in this city or in this country that won't supply you a imported cigarette cheaper than the Indian brands. They're all out there. Regulation and maintenance of those regulations, implementation of regulations is a huge problem. So a ban in and of itself is a good idea, but knowing the way things work is probably going to fall flat on its face, and my fear is that the science behind the new technology that is there is not going to get a fair trial, as Bharat suggested, that where are the clinical trials to be able to take these decisions.
So, under 1 minute, would you want to make a point to that, what Mr. Mukarji just said?
I think he said the answer himself. He made my life very easy. Regulation is difficult. Ban is also not the ideal way of doing it, but for heaven's sake, just don't get into something which is too new. Nobody in the world knows what sort of trouble you are in. In a country of so many young people, the best thing is avoid, avoid, avoid.
Mr. Bhattacharya, you have expertise in public policy. what according to you can be an alternative, as Mr. Mukarji said?
We have to segregate certain categories of products from others, because there are certain things, there are certain policies which do not work in certain category of products. I mean, forget about policies. Even established economic theories do not work on certain category of products. For example, your cost and demand curve. I mean, generally in economics you see that as the cost of a product goes up, usually the demand comes down. There are certain category of products which defy this curve, and these are the addictive substances, be it alcohol, be it tobacco, and as a constituent of tobacco, nicotine. So there are certain theories which doesn't work. That yes, as a matter of public policy, one would always strive to do the best or to reach the best possible scenario. However, living on the ground, we have to accept that in between the good and the bad, there remains one particular category which would want to be good or at the good side, but are not able to do so. Now, what happens to them? Or while looking at something which is, as you can say, extreme as a prohibition, are you denying that particular population or that particular stakeholder, which I would feel everybody would want to have good health. I mean, nobody would want to be, suffering from a lung disease or a cancer or a cardiovascular disease. Right. Everybody would want good health, but they are not able to go towards that good. So we have to ask this question, that by having a fear of abuse of a substance, can you actually prohibit the use of that substance? If you have to stop abuse of something, you have to regulate something. And I know that regulation is much more difficult. It's much more difficult than simply saying something that we have prohibited it. We just had this example of US, certain people dying. And what was the news? That they died because of using ENDS devices. Now, to have this blame is just like blaming a spoon for food poisoning.
Okay.
Nobody knows what was there in that device that they were vaping.
Yeah.
Very good.
So you cannot blame the device.
Generalizing everything.
And generalizing everything. Non-regulation would lead to a situation where you would have a problem, but you will be in denial of the problem. That is all that I wanted to say about this.
So Dr. Ravi was wanting to conclude something. So last thoughts.
Let's fight the problem that we have right now. I would love to see cigarettes being banned. I would love to see BD being banned, and I'm sure one day we will get there. This is end game. But all tobacco industry is seeing their sales coming down, not only in India, all over the world. And the interesting thing, which hasn't been brought out so far, many of the major e-cigarette companies are owned by tobacco, big tobacco, and they are using exactly the same strategies as tobacco was using.
And vaping is a $9 billion industry worldwide, of which 80% is cottage industry. So I'm not sure how big tobacco is playing such a big role in this. Part of the problem is the spurious materials that are going into the liquids that are being ingested. Nicotine is obviously not the problem, because WHO themselves have stated that continued use of nicotine patches, gums, etc., which is being provided by Big Pharma, is fantastic. They endorse it. They said sustained use is terrific. So why are they against ingestion of nicotine through an ENDS instrument? The minute you get into oils and you get into other substances being added, perfumes or whatever it is, the narcotics and things like that, well, then you're asking for trouble. If you, an injection is a great thing when you're not well.
Okay.
But if you want to take a heroin injection, you are going to kill yourself.
To be fair to Mr. Gopal.
If you're about to end.
Sir, please.
So you said about thieves coming into the house and stuff. Suppose for a known devil, we need support from a lesser accomplished thief. I think we would always look at that aspect also. So we have, again, I would stress that we are not very clear if this thief could be probably helping us in getting rid of the bigger goons who are there in the system. So the tobacco as such, if we can actually help, then probably we should be looking at least at sort of way those things are. And just asking, okay, you are a small thief, you first go into the jail. because we can't catch the big thieves, because they're too big for us.
Shutting
So
door is
that is not the correct way.
Shutting door is
I
never
think-
a
I'm looking at
I think
from
we're
that
comparing
analogy of
apples to
thieves.
oranges actually.
I think, gentlemen, the debate will like
It
this.
will continue
It will
actually for
continue.
some time.
I mean,
But it's
we're
good we
short
are
on-
arguing it at least.
We're short
good.
on time,
Yes.
and I think it was getting to a point where probably we would come to a conclusion. But I guess it's not going to happen in very we have
One
limited time.
conclusion, Preeti, is that tobacco, that smoking is bad, so it is not harmless.
Correct.
There is
So I
nothing
was
called
just about
harmless.
to say that
Harmless smoking
the
does not
thief-
exist.
The thief does exist.
Thieves are
whether
bad.
Small
Thieves
or
are bad.
big.
Thief is a
Thieves
thief.
are
Thief is a
bad.
thief.
Correct.
Thief is a thief.
So
Avoid
smoking is
thieves.
that thief
Avoid
that you
thieves.
don't
That's-
want
that
to
we all
allow
agree.
in your home. With that note, we would like to end this special discussion here. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us for this special show. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching this.